Okay, so moving into the UC application itself, so you'll note here that you are allowed to accept or to choose one main major and then an alternate or backup major. Notice here there's no provision for you to put a minor just yet when you're applying, nor can you say that you're doing a double major. So this simply means that they will consider you for your major first, your first choice major, and then if they can't accept you for it, they will accept you for your alternate or your backup major, right? Now, there are some key sort of caveats to that. For UCLA, for instance, they will only consider you for an alt major if it's within the same school or college as your main choice major, which means if your first choice major was something in their School of Engineering, their Samuel A. School of Engineering, your alt major should also be in the School of Engineering. Otherwise, it's sort of like a wasted slot. They won't consider you for it. For most other UCs, the strategy would be for you to pick a main major into like hopefully maybe something more competitive, and then your alt major would be something safer. So that way, if they didn't consider you for your harder major, you have a shot for the easier one. Okay. Now, so before you actually select your major, even before you fill in the application, it makes a lot of sense for you to start doing research on what are called impacted majors, which are the most competitive majors at certain UC campuses. Because if you're going head on with students in the most competitive or selective majors, it might make it much more difficult for you to get in, right? So potentially what you could do is you can go ahead and apply for certain majors that are a little bit less commonly applied to, or have a history of having an easier acceptance rate, and then going for that, or at least putting an alt major that is not what's called impacted, okay? It's also important for the UCs for them to see evidence for interest in and preparation for your major. So they want to see that some of your activities at least align with the interest in your major so that they can see that you would be very competitive for it. Okay, now we also recommend that at least one of your 4 personal insight questions, or the essays for the UC system, which we'll get to in a bit here, should be about your interest and preparation in your major. Okay, so we'll take a look at the different prompt numbers later on. Okay, now I do have to warn you though that some majors you cannot change into if you didn't get accepted to outright as a freshman. So, you don't want to be locked out of a certain major. So you might want to do some research, because let's say, for example, you weren't accepted to the School of Engineering at Berkeley, right? So chances are very slim and sometimes impossible, depending on the actual major, for you to change to, let's say, the electrical engineering and computer science major in Berkeley's College of Engineering, right? So if you weren't accepted outright, you can't change to it. So you definitely have to do your homework. Check to see which majors you can change to if you got accepted to a certain college or school within the UC campus that you're looking into, okay? All right, so one UC, which is UC San Diego, right? So the UC San Diego campus is, I think, the only UC that explicitly states which majors are actually impacted. They call them capped majors. So for UC San Diego, their entire School of Biological Sciences is impacted, as are fields like data science, physics, public health, and all the majors within their Jacobs School of Engineering, okay? So these would make it harder for you to get into. So for UC San Diego, it makes sense that if you're picking a capped major as your main choice major, your alternative or backup major should be a non-capped major, okay? All right, so maybe to try to give you some guidance to see what UCs are strongest in, I've also listed certain campuses by their ranking for certain fields, because I think for some of you, it'd be easier to see which UCs are actually competitive for certain kind of like popular pre-professional fields. So I'll start with business, right? So the most notable UCs for undergraduate business are UC Berkeley, then UC Irvine, San Diego, and Riverside. You will need to note, though, that UCLA is also very strong in terms of preparation for business, but they don't have an outright undergraduate business major. They have what's called a business economics major, which is still much more econ oriented. But many students who go to UCLA end up doing really well for MBA programs if they majored in this. So nominally, it's not an undergraduate business major, but it serves the same purpose. Okay, so therefore, it's not really ranked by US News for undergrad business. Okay. Next up, we have undergraduate engineering. A lot of students these days, look at engineering as a possible pathway. So Berkeley, not surprisingly, is going to be the top one listed. Then you have UCLA and San Diego still also within the top 20. But you'll notice that even Davis, Santa Barbara, and Irvine are all still relatively strong in the top 40. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, and also an incentive for you to want to apply to more UC campuses, because honestly, even mid-tier UCs tend to be outstanding for undergraduate engineering relative to the other universities across the country. Specifically for computer science, practically every UC, with the exception of UC Merced, is in the top 60, in the top 56 even here, right? So if you're interested in computer science, just simply applying to most, if not all, the UCs would actually be a smart play on your part, because you would get access to and be considered for some outstanding programs specifically for computer science, right? Now, if you're interested in pre-med, not surprisingly, many of the UCs are outstanding for that as well. Schools like Berkeley, UCLA, San Diego has, like I mentioned, an awesome school of biological sciences, right? Davis and Irvine are also outstanding, right? And then lastly, there's not really a pre-law major, but as a way to gauge the relative strength in terms of like social sciences for a school, Berkeley and San Diego would be the top two choices there, followed then by UCLA, right? And obviously it depends on whatever major you pick specifically. Be like a history or English major. Shoot, you could be a math major and apply to law school, right? So there's not technically a designated pre-law major. So if you're interested in becoming a lawyer and you got into one of these UCs, just pick a major that I typically tell students, pick a major that teaches you how to think very critically and to write well, right? Because those are two of the most important skills that you would need to be a lawyer and to be able to get into a very competitive law school.